back in 1999, you know, 3 women putting on a West End musical wasn't always taken that seriously.
And now look.
And now look.
Welcome back to Broadway with Mamma Mia. How do you feel?
Big mix of emotions, really.
Yeah.
I mean, to be back at the Winter Garden Theatre, which was where it all started in 2001, and the most beautiful house, truly. So that's kind of like emotional in itself. And then just having the show back, just feeling kind of nostalgia, celebrating many things. It brings a lot of comfort, I think. And people, what I'm fascinated is, you know, seeing the preview audiences, is the new generation that's coming, as well as the people that want to see it again, that saw it on Broadway or saw it somewhere on the tour or in another, you know, see it in London. But, you know, seeing 16-year-olds and 25-year-olds is incredible. Like, they've seen the movie, or they maybe saw Broadway when they were like 10 or 12, and they really, really want to be back. And the way they listen to every word is fabulous.
Because the row in front of me was grandparents, the parents, these young children who were like 7, 8, and 9, who knew the songs, watching the show. It was just so nice, like you said, generation after generation of people bringing their family and experiencing Mamma Mia on Broadway.
Yeah, just happiness. I mean, it's never pretended to be anything it isn't, but I think the storytelling gets more, you know, relevant even today. I think audiences relate to it. I think, you know, we've got the most fabulous cast, and they tell that story, and the audience is listening to every word. And the songs are, of course, you know, the icing on the cake.
So I want to go back to the beginning. So how did you originally tell Benny and Bjorn, like, I want to take your songs and turn it into some kind of musical?
Well, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
They humoured me, and they had, you know, the story is, of course, ABBA had disbanded in 1982. They thought ABBA would go away, really, as a band and people in the music. And I worked in musical theatre. I'd worked as a stage manager, and then I was Tim Rice's production assistant. So I understood in musical theatre to an extent, and I thought there is a story to be told here, and the song "Winner Takes It All" is the story. But convincing then Bjorn and Benny, who were like, no, we're moving on to other things, you know, ABBA and everything. So yeah, it took a while. And then I think in the 90s, they realized that people still loved those ABBA songs and they weren't going away. And they gave me a kind of a window. Start very small, and if it doesn't work, it can just go away. Well, of course, we started big in a big theatre in London. And there was no Broadway, but yeah, they've always been encouraging, and they've always been very proud of the show. But I think, kind of as I've said before, their caution was probably my drive. I just believed in it. I mean, I don't know how I don't know how I did, but I really did. I could take the risk. I mean, I talked about it endlessly to friends and to people who advised me, and they said, well, if you really believe in it, you know, give up the day job. I was producing, I was, you know, in film and TV development, so I was kind of in the business, but I thought, yeah, I've got to. So I sold my apartment. When I say apartment, it was, you know, a tiny little apartment with a huge mortgage. So I kind of got rid of that and finance myself to kind of move the project forward.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't really ask Bjorn and Benny for any money if they were giving me the music. So, but I had no, you know, that was the plan. And even when we opened the show, I had a plan to produce something else about 9 months later, but that was it. I was full-time Mamma Mia for the last 27 years, but it was, you know, it was a chance. I always believed it would work. I had no idea to what extent. And I love those songs, and those songs told a story, and they really spoke to me. And I think, so it was Katherine Johnson's story that finally convinced Bjorn and Benny. So, and particularly Bjorn as the lyricist, because his lyrics were going to be the source. So that was, I always knew it was weddings, it was holidays, but how could you create a musical about a broken romance? You had to have and also those ABBA songs fell into two categories. There were the younger kind of honey honeys, and then there was the big emotional songs, Knowing Me, Knowing You, Winner Takes It All. So that was what I went to Catherine with, and she said, mother, daughter. I'm like, wow, stay there.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. And the ambition was always to create an original musical, even though it is existing pop songs. And I think, I'm seeing the Broadway cast here, and for all the casts of all the shows, that they tell that story. They really, everyone relates to the hope, the second chances, the romance. I think that's the key.
Yeah, and then bringing your director in.
Well then, of course, yes. So it was three women, that we were like a tribe. Katherine Johnson, the writer, Phyllida Lloyd, director. And I went about it in Phyllida Lloyd was a kind of heavyweight opera director, serious theatre director. We were all just under 40. I met with Phyllida thinking, no chance, she won't be interested. But of course she saw the chance of the empowerment of the story and the women's story. And she said to me, I said, when will you let me know that you're in? She said, before you're 40, which was like 2 weeks away from that date. I won't even tell you how old we all are now. But I think the strength in Mamma Mia, like Bjorn and Benny wrote great songs for women. I mean, they wrote those songs for Agneta and Frida, but I think Mamma Mia has a great arsenal of women that have been a strength, from the architecture brought in by Phyllida, Catherine and myself, to the wonderful leading ladies we've had on all the shows and then the movies. So we were, and back in 1999, three women putting on a West End musical wasn't always taken that seriously.
And now look.
No,
I love that. So, why do you think generation after generation this musical resonates, like you say, with the young children and parents and everything else? What is it about this story that's made Mamma Mia one of the most successful musicals?
I think it is because it is too generational. I mean, it's Sophie and her mum, and I think it appeals because I have said it before, but I think people literally see themselves on that stage, man, woman, and the children actually have always loved ABBA music. It's almost like the Mozart effect. There's something, from the age of 5, tinies can learn those songs. So almost a soothing effect. But I think people want to be Sophie and Donna. They want to be in the flipper dance. They want to be slightly silly. They've all been kind of, Donna Sheridan, done the kind of backpacking around Europe, fallen in love with 3 different men. And I think it just has that appeal.
But again, like you said, starting the whole thing, I have to mention the 2 successful films, because Hollywood came to you very early on, but they were like, we don't want to do it your way, we want to do it our way. And you were like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I was very firm about that.
Yeah.
And they were very respectful of that. But I had nothing to lose, a bit like starting the whole project.
Yeah.
I was never going to hand it over because I knew that we wouldn't kind of capture whatever we had. And I remember somebody saying to me, how will you ever on the movie kind of capture what the auditorium has at the end of Mamma Mia when the audience have their opportunity to kind of stand up and join in with the wonderful finale? And I was like, well, we will. And we did. And of course it was very funny shooting it because, generally when you're working with a Hollywood studio, you don't talk about the end before you shot the film. And I'm like, no, we have to have that finale in. And so the finale had to be added on. It was like an extra cost. It was like, Judy, do you understand budgets? And I'm like, yeah, this has to be in. And they kind of set a test for me, and they said, we were nearly finishing in Greece shooting, and our major movie stars were about to go home. So the studio set a test for me saying, well, why don't you go and ask, Meryl and Pierce and Stellan and Colin if they'd like to come back to London and stay on for a few days to shoot this finale. So I think they thought that everyone would say, no, we're on a hard out, we're going home. So I went round to all their Winnebagos and I said, what do you think, spandex, the whole thing? And they went, we're in. And so we all left Skopelos and went back to Pinewood and got on with it. We put Pierce, Colin and Stellan in the most uncomfortable platform boots that they've ever had to walk across the stage in. I think they were women's boots that we bought from a market. Anyway, it was, yeah. And I think the films have had a huge influence on our theatre and on musicals altogether. I think it brought the musical theatre community into, loving going to the theatre.
Yep. Can you tell us anything about Mamma Mia 3, the film?
Well, it's in the works, definitely in my mind, in my thought process, and a lot of positivity to make another, not just from the kind of people that love Mamma Mia, but the studio and So I hope. I mean, it's a trilogy. It really, people want to know what happens to those characters. So I hope so. The second film took us on an odyssey. And I think all our cast. I mean, as Pierce Brosnan actually said to me, that they all loved shooting both movies, and it's like Philida Lloyd formed a repertory company, really, because they all had to sing and dance. They all had to, be there. I mean, everyone. So I think everyone wants to do it again. So let's hope.
So finally, what are you the proudest of with Mamma Mia? Now it's back, and just the whole franchise and what you created.
I'm just always, proud of everyone that works on it. I mean, we have a fantastic team here in the US, and the journey to get to Broadway, I never thought that would happen, and our wonderful cast. I'm just proud we're all here, really.
Before we wrap up, we found this from the ground floor, from the first floor. This is your Sardi's portrait. This is really great.
I was so young.
You look exactly the same in this. What does this mean to you, having this?
Well, I mean, to have one's portrait in Sardi's is incredible, from Max. And I still have the earrings. Well, it was a huge honor. Very special to be included, and a Brit, to be in Sardi's on the Broadway Wall of Fame. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Well, this is totally a full circle moment, because you started with Mamma Mia on Broadway, you brought Mamma Mia back.
Yeah. So she's brought me luck.
She has brought you, I love that.